years, they get attacked every month. They still can't stop it. So how people aren't sitting in America looking at where we failed, which is what you've got to do. You've just got to look at where we failed. You have to look at Europe and think, do we want our country to become like that? And what I cannot believe is that you have so many people saying, yes, we do. I just can't believe it. You have a man who has been elected, who is attempting to save your country from the distress that we're going through, attempting to save American families from living the life that we have to live in Luton. He's attempting to save you from it, and everyone attacks him. I just cannot understand it, and I cannot. And one thing that gave me so much was when Donald Trump was elected, I thought people are awake, and then I looked at who Donald Trump chose to put in positions of power, and I looked at what they've said, and I saw that they all understand. Now we have people being replaced, because up until that point you had the complete infiltration of the American government by the Muslim Brotherhood. And when you're reading all this, it's just so Trump gave us hope. And Trump, and that moment was a lightning moment for us in this country. You think like many Americans would have felt he gave you hope, but even over here, I thought now we have a world leader who can challenge it, who can challenge what is happening, now here in the west of Europe, we now look to east of Europe for inspiration and guidance on how we can battle this problem. So we now look to Hungary, who are on the front line again. And if you look at Hungary and Poland's history, if you look at their histories, they've been on the front line against Islam many times. And now, once again, Europe's going to look to them as their defence.
Tell us what they're doing over there.
So in Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, many of these countries who joined the European Union, they joined to better the wealth of their country. Yeah, they would have thought it was great when they joined. Now they're being told they have to. The European Union are forcing them to take mass quotas of Muslim immigration. Now, all of these countries coming out saying, we don't want them. I went to one speech in Czech Republic where the Prime Minister gave a speech. And in his speech, he said, we have 500,000 immigrants in the Czech Republic. We're not against immigrants. We do not want Muslim immigrants. We do not want people who will not respect our culture, our laws, our way of life, or our women. Okay? Now, you just have to look at the rape statistics or across Europe. What's happening across Europe? So Poland's leaders, Hungary's leaders, their leaders are speaking for their people. And they're able to do that because their countries have not been mass infiltrated. They don't have millions of Muslims who at a click of a finger will riot and burn things. So they're able to stand up and just say it how it is. They're able to identify the problem where it is, and they're able to speak for their own countries. And because of that, the European Union are already now trying to destroy Poland, to destroy Hungary, in any way they can, whether it be with infiltration of systems like what we saw in Ukraine, with the European Union done in Ukraine. They're trying to do similar things now in Poland that cause uprisings, and it's just, I just look to think, where are we heading? As a father of three, as a man who loves his country, if you've anyone in America, you have to learn from what's happened. And every country and every people should learn from history. We have 1,400 years of history to look through to understand that 45 countries have turned to civil conflict and lost when Islam has become a majority. Now, why we think Britain will be any different, why we think this is a different era of time, it's exactly the same ideology. Whether you pick up in Afghanistan or you pick it up in Britain, it's the same book, it's the same preachers, it's the same problem. So in Luton, this is where you have to learn, and you have to realise you can be walking around your community one day and just like that, it's changed, and it's changed forever. And that's how quick it can happen. Because if you take, and this is not Tommy Robinson's words, this is the government demographic growth forecast by 2030. So, a mere 13 years from now, the Bangladeshi and Pakistani community of Luton will increase by 70 to 77%. 70 to 77% by 2030. The black and white community, 1.2, 1.4. So that is when you see the mass scale of how big. And when you look into that and you think, well, some people might say, well, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? Say, because of the problems that come from the Pakistani and Bangladeshi communities, whether it be honour violence, whether it be intermarriage between cousins.
Exactly. Think about it. What do you want to leave for your grandkids?
In one city in the UK called Bradford, 76% of Muslims marry their first cousins. Now, I can't say the word, consanguinity, that's what it's called, where you're marrying your cousins. Now, the birth defects. In the UK, 3% of 3% of our population is Pakistani. They are responsible for over 30% of birth defects. So then, and the cost of all of these things, the cost upon the system, the cost upon the country, the cost upon the benefit system, for how many disabled children are. Every time you see a Muslim family walking with 4 or 5 children, there's one in a wheelchair. Every family. because they're all intermixing, they're all inbreeding. That's where they're all inbreeding. It doesn't help anyone, and they're only doing this again. All of this again comes down to because Muhammad did. Because Muhammad married his cousin. It's okay. It's halal. And and then the cost of that, and then if you want to go on to the cost of terrorism, not even the cost of terrorism, but also we have 3,000 would-be jihadis
dumb us all down, huh?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To monitor each person takes 3 groups of 9 people. So 27 men per day per
Talk
per
about
extremist.
biological
We have
warfare,
3,000
people.
on that watch. That costs us £9 billion a year just to monitor these people. Now we've actually got a terror watch list of over 20,000, but we can't afford to monitor all of them. But with the terrorism of arrests and offences going up 60% every year, that 3,000, this is where you have to think, in 10 years' time, that 3,000 may be 30,000. That's a small army in our country. If you look at the prison populations, this is where it's just, these are all facts. And I know liberals hate facts, but they're facts, okay? Facts don't care about feelings. And if you look at the prison population in France is upwards of 70%. 10% of the country is Muslim. 70% of the jail is Muslim. If you look in the UK, we have a 5% Muslim population, but 15.2% of the prison is Islamic. 15.2%. You look at the general birth, so that means Muslims are 3 times more likely. Why? Why is this? If you look at grooming, so this is men, large groups of Muslim men, or any men, street-level gang grooming of young underage girls and boys, but young underage girls, for prostitution. In the UK, they call this grooming. If you go through the statistics, 90% of these convictions, 90% are Muslim. That's out of a population of 5%. 20% are called Muhammad. It's just the fact, the figures don't lie. Why is this so out? And I know why it is, because I've dissected the Quran. I know the verse after verse after verse that tells them, outside of your 4 wives, you can take whatever your right arm possesses. You are allowed to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. Muhammad took non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. You're allowed to, you can. That's why it's not seen as such a problem within their community. That's why they're massively overrepresented. And that's why we have an epidemic of street gang prostitution of our daughters and sisters. So, for years and years and years, what they attempted to do to us in this country, or our voice, is keep it as a fringe element. They tried to push it aside as a fringe.
Open your eyes,
element.
people.
As we've moved forward, I've carried on saying the same.